So we're back again, myself and Lee, just for our weekly coffee chat, and we've got so many things to discuss this week because there's just such a lot going on in the accountancy space. And I'm going to caveat this sort of podcast beforehand that there's not a bird in this room, but there is a bird that's sat right outside this window chirping away. So if it carries on, I might have to go and shut the window. So hopefully not, but it's loud, isn't it, Lee?
I thought it was your chair at first. So
No, it's just sat there staring me out.
what dog's on it? Don't stare it off if you get your dog in.
Oh God, never has this happened before, but we'll deal with it. So let's just have a look here. So for anyone who doesn't know, in 4 days, in fact, let's go back to the website because we're getting an update every few seconds. In 4 days, 20 hours, 33 minutes, and no seconds. The Digital Accountancy Show is on, and that's in the Evolution London Battersea Park on the 16th and 17th of April. So I'd like to just bring this one to everybody's attention because the Digital Accountancy Show is different. So it's different to Accountex, and then we've got XeroCon, I think, in June. It's different to the FAB that's just been and gone. So every single one of these events is ever so slightly different in a different way. So this is, if I was to describe it, I kind of would say it's almost a bit like, I don't know, if you want to say a disco or sort of a nightclub sort of theme to it. It's quite cool, really. But they've got loads of different stages. So it's all powered by Xero, and they have these amazing stages. So they've got a main stage, and then they've got an Evolution Theatre, a Tech Academy, Advisory Live, a fireside chat. There's a Xero stage, a how-to hub, a knowledge share roundtable, and then they've got the night show, which is apparently legendary. And I've seen pictures from last year that made me really jealous and gave me huge FOMO, but I can't go again this year, which I'm gutted about. But maybe next year. But I've just had a quick scan through some of the speakers that are there, and there's just going to be tons of insight, tons of CPD opportunity and networking opportunities. For anyone, they're talking about automation, AI, transformations, industry app stacks, growth, leadership, pretty much anything and everything. Sustainability is a big one this year, which is really good to see, that being discussed in the accountancy field. I think it seems to be another one of those bigger topics. But we're talking about AI in mind. Before we get on to another topic, I think it's important just to, I don't know if anybody saw this week, but I had the lovely Ryan on the podcast talking about all things AI, and what's going to be happening over the next sort of 6 months, what he expects the industry to look like, etc. But I'd be really keen to hear your views, Lee, on what you think the next sort of 6 to 12 months looks like in terms of AI and integration, and even if the CPAA are using AI in any way, shape, or form to integrate into the business, really.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the go-to one that people can think about with AI would be the sort of large language models that we've seen, so like ChatGPT and things like that.
Yeah.
Or Spark and stuff. But I don't know about you, but I've found those things to be hopeless when it comes to anything specific. So they're very good at like churning out. If you're using them, I use them all the time for like if we've got to do social media posts or send an email.
Yeah.
I find them very useful for kind of critiquing and tweaking that kind of copy stuff when it's not high stakes and it's just something that needs to be put out there and you just want it to sound a bit better. But I think in terms of like the actual kind of accountancy profession and the technical aspects of accountancy, it's going to be specific AI models that have been trained with accountancy information in mind. So like I know like with programming before ChatGPT, they'd released GitHub Copilot, which was an AI that was specifically trained on GitHub repositories, so it's specifically trained on code. And that is much more accurate at churning out code. And again, like in the medical field, where you look at how they're using AI to target to identify things like cancer in X-ray scans and things. It's all specifically trained AI models.
Yeah.
I do think over the coming years we'll start to see more and more, particularly with people using technologies like Xero or QuickBooks, where their actions and what they're already doing in terms of bookkeeping or preparing accounts and things with those pieces of software are already being recorded. You're going to start seeing specific AI models that are trained on that. So things like Xero's bank feeds, where at the moment it'll give you like the allocations, and you can kind of allocate it to the account that you think it should go to, and it does some all right by itself, and others you kind of have to go in and manually adjust. Things like that are going to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
But I do always think it's never going to be 100% perfect. It's going to streamline, it's going to increase efficiency, it's going to increase productivity, and it's going to free up accountants and bookkeepers to do more of the value added stuff as well with their clients.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see where this goes, because I like listening to other people who are running practices or even running a firm, nothing to do with accounting, and seeing what they're doing, because sometimes it seems to me that there's a lot of talk around AI, but there's not a lot of example of the use of AI. So it's like, great, ChatGPT is great, fine. But as you say, it's really limited. And I've tried using it for various things, including, creating a presentation or training. I've tried to use it to almost rewrite certain paragraphs where I think, it sounds all right, but it could do with a bit of something else. And it's okay, but it does not get specifics. So you can't just type in something to do, if you want to go a little bit techie down our route with AML or accounting, it doesn't know. It just comes up with some generic response, and you think, that's okay, yeah, a limitation. But what I've seen other people do with some of the AI is, in the likes of Xero and QuickBooks, where you've got your bank reconciliations, there are bots out there that you can use to reconcile, but they're not accurate. They don't have a thought process. So if you've got, for instance, a reconciling item where you've got multiple different invoices, it will just allocate to the first example that appears. But say you've got 3 invoices exactly the same amount for different individuals, it can't segregate and know the difference because it's not trained to do so. Or even if it's one contact with 3 invoices, it doesn't know to allocate it to the first earlier invoice, let's just say. So it can reconcile, not very well. And would you spend just as much time letting it go off and do something, and then having to review what's happened? So seeing people do that, yeah, which I thought, oh wow, that when I first got told about it, I thought, that's brilliant, that's amazing. But a few people have tried it, and it's like, nah, doesn't really do the job.
The thing that I question with it is when they're training a model like that, I think it might open up just how imprecise accountancy can be.
Yes.
So we like to think of accountancy as, oh, these are the rules, and this is your debit and credit for this situation, this is how this looks. But there is a lot of subjectivity in it, and I think it potentially opens up just how different accountants and different businesses will deal with different transactions. And when you come to creating a chart of accounts, a lot of that can be, the names can be largely whatever you need for that business, and that's subjective, isn't it?
One fine example is, we deal a lot with property companies on this side, and you might have a client who prefers to use, a refurb code over what you would normally post to repairs, but that's that client's preference because they get that data off and they analyze it in a certain way. You can't teach that broadly because that's again specific. So it's like, you can kind of rely on these things, but not, you're always going to have that human input, I feel. Yeah. So I don't think.
The one that I always come back to is, I remember reading, during COVID, so airline tickets, like plane tickets, the pricing system for that is all automated.
Yeah.
And like it's a machine that decides what the price of the ticket should be based on various factors, and it's been used for decades without issue. And then when COVID struck, because it was such a freak kind of unusual thing, it didn't know how to react to it. So you
No.
start seeing all these weird prices for like airline tickets because it didn't quite understand what was going on. And I think this is like, again, things that we like to think are precise and kind of scientific and impartial are quite often not. And accountancy is just the same. There's that subjectivity in it. I mean, you can come down to things like what you're talking about, whether you're going to amortize something and how, what your depreciation policy is going to be and how you're going to treat it. A lot of it comes down to a human discussion as to what's
Mm.
best for that business and what's best for that reporting entity.
Yeah, and even little things like I would love, even here, yes, we have templates for certain things like certain emails, and it's, this is the broad template you use, but then you make it a little bit bespoke to that client, to make sure you're covering certain things or requesting certain info, which is great. But then on the other hand of it, it's you always have those clients who don't like the formal way of things, and they don't want you to write an email saying, "Dear sirs, please provide us this and this." It's like, my name's talk to me normally. What do you want? Give me a phone call. And they prefer that method. And it's that balance sometimes of, yeah, you can automate this area over here, but should you be doing that across the board, or is there a way of almost unticking certain individuals for their wants and requirements and things? So it's like
it's the
great
image
idea.
project as well when you're using it for copy as well. It's like I've seen a few comments. I'm sure you saw the Wonka experience thing up in Glasgow, where it was just that horrific kind of like they'd just not put any money into it. It was a bit of a scam. But the website was all like AI generated art. And I've seen like quite a few people now, like the instinct is you can kind of feel that something's AI
Yeah,
generated, and it can give the impression, well, there's not any real serious thought or process or money or effort going in behind this, and it looks a bit scammy, it looks a bit odd.
yeah.
I don't know what you.
I'll give you a funny example of that, but in a real world practice. So there's a very well known practice that I know of, and there was a client who was batting between a few different practices because what they wanted was like someone to hold the hand through a process. And this very well known firm, who are got multiple awards for customer service and all this stuff, they'd gone to that firm, and the firm, it was quite clear that the communication on those emails was a very broad, we've copied, pasted our response back. And the client ended up not going with that firm because they didn't feel as if they were being listened to. And it's like, there's like, for me, I consider all these things and I listen to these stories and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, well, maybe that's not the best idea to go down the automated email route per se, and make sure that we're still adding our thought process and our personality into things. But that's interesting to me. That was like one of the first sort of, things where you think, right, this is the plan, this is what I'm going to do. And then you take a step back and go, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about that. And the client's experience on the other end. That's interesting.
Especially like, because it's just you, isn't it? You've not got a big team or anything working with you. So your clients surely are in part buying you as an accounting professional.
Yeah.
They want you, they want, what you're offering you as a person as well as your knowledge.
Yeah.
And the more you kind of automate and the more you rely on these kind of bits of technology, the less it is you. Like they can get ChatGPT themselves. They don't need to pay you for it. Like they're paying you for you.
I think you've got to be careful not to use AI, but try not to strip your personality out of use, if that's even possible.
Like I said, I think the use cases are going to be more specific and probably more technical, and they might not even be things that you as an accountant are using, but more how HMRC is perhaps assessing whether somebody has in fact declared the right amount of income and things like that. I mean, one use that I'm looking at here at CPAA, we're starting the process, of reviewing how we risk assess our members. So we're looking at what risk factors we should be looking at, how we assess those, how we collect those, and things like that. One thing I'm keen to try to do to see whether it works is to train an ML model on that data, and to see whether it can then accurately predict what somebody who is a compliance professional would highlight as somebody who is high risk, and to see whether there's any kind of disparity with that. And I don't know, because again, like compliance, similar to accountancy, I don't know how much of it comes down to a sort of experience feel. Like, this is, I know from experience, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't sit right. I don't know. It's
yeah, and I would argue for both, because think about an audit. So you've got audit thresholds, and you might only test to 1% of total revenue for materiality. And then you might have another person who would say, no, I'm going to set materiality at a certain percentage of assets, let's just say. But even with both of those examples, you've got those data sets, you might be on a job and be thinking, okay, I'm just doing a simple test, I'm just doing a walkthrough. But what you're telling me doesn't add up to my knowledge of the industry, or a business of your size with this many employees, all of that, which wouldn't be part of the data set, but would be part of past experience. So it's I think a bit of both,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, again, things like from an accountant's point of view, like you're saying, like with any sort of compliance, whether it's you're doing an audit or whether it's you're meeting a client for the first time and trying to assess like risk from an ML point of view, the data might look great, like and a convincing, unscrupulous person is going to make their data look great, aren't they?
Yeah.
But when you meet someone, you might yourself get a bit of a gut feel like this person doesn't sit right. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand what this business is. They don't, and you might start picking up on that just through a casual conversation, as opposed to just looking at cold hard data and sort of metrics that you can put on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, actually, because that's just sparked something in my memory of all of the AML processes, etc., that we've got to adhere to. Sometimes you can look at everything on paper, and everything on paper looks absolutely fantastic, and yep, they're doing everything right, and they're adhering, and they're completing the sheets they need to complete. But then when you ask that question, or you start asking questions about how well they know a client, suddenly the conversation drops.
Yeah.
And I think you've missed the point here. You need to understand what this client does and be able to document that, not just a tick box exercise. That's interesting. But going back to HMRC then, Lee. So we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about this new sort of reform, I guess. It's not in writing yet, is it? It's all sort of proposed. In fact, I'll let you take over. You explain it to us a little bit better.
So this goes back quite a way. So as a lot of people listening, I hope, know, like, you don't need to be a member of a professional body in order to be a tax agent. There's no test on your kind of competency. You don't need to hold a particular qualification. You need to be registered for money laundering. If you're processing things on a computer digitally, processing personal information, you need to be registered with the ICO. And then there's obviously a whole plethora of business laws and things you have to comply with. But there's no central licensing authority or education requirement to become a tax agent or an accountant. It's long been kind of an issue, I think, for professionals and also for regulators, for HMRC, for Treasury and everyone. And it's been something that's never really been looked at properly or addressed. So anyway, there was a big scandal with the loan charge scandal. I don't know if you've seen anything from that, and there's been a big review into that. And coming out of that was the need to have some additional kind of standards for tax agents. This kind of sort of cowboy Wild West setup is no longer in use. So HMRC have issued a few different consultations. The first was to mandate PI for tax agents. But now the preferred model that they're saying they want to go along with is to require tax agents to be members of professional bodies. So you won't be able to be a tax agent, which is essential really for being a practicing accountant, unless you are a member of a recognised professional body. This is something that CPA does support. We think it will help to increase standards. We think it will, even on a very base level, like, if you're not with a professional body, nobody's checking you've done your CPD, nobody's checking you've got PI insurance, very basic kind of good practice things. They're not a requirement, nobody's checking that. So CPA is very much in support of that. And I really wanted to kind of just emphasize to anybody listening, if you're looking to enter into public practice, if you're thinking, I want to set up in practice one day, just the importance of not just getting your qualifications. So if you're studying with ICB or you're studying with CPAA or whoever, it's not just about getting that qualification, it's about making sure you transfer and keep a professional membership going as well, because you don't want to end up in a situation. I mean, HMRC was talking about 2028, I think, as being an implementation target.
Oh, wow.
So you don't want to end up in a situation where you might set up in practice and then 12 months later you're rushing around trying to find a professional body that you have to join. So it's so important now that if you're in practice and you're not with a professional body, you need to start thinking, well, do I need to join one? And if you're looking to get into practice, it's important more so than ever to prioritise the need to prioritise professional body membership.
See, I'm going to come in on the sort of devil's advocate side of it, because I have mixed views on supporting, and I can see the other side of it. So personally, I support it. I think it's a good thing. And I think having that professional body behind you, it's not just a case of, well, I've got letters after my name or whatever, makes me more established. It's a case of, with that professional body, you're getting the support. You've got the technical guidance, you've got the webinars, the seminars, the community to ask questions, etc. That goes along with all of that. So I'm very much for it. Stephanie just put a question in. So everybody will need a recognised body to do tax. I didn't know this. Will exams need to be done? So what it means is that you need to have a professional qualification, yes, because in order to be part of a body, you need to have either be qualified by experience or have a professional qualification of some kind. So this is what we're saying, that with going forward, in order to be a tax agent, you would have to have you'd be part of a body. So a body would be CPAA and others, AAT, ICB, CIMA, SIPFA, ICAW, ACCA, etc. So that's what they're aiming for at the moment. So it's key to start thinking about a professional body. And I've, worked with the CPAA. I've been to your offices, haven't I, Lee? I know what you do. I love what the CPAA do. We don't talk about CPAA enough, in my opinion. And they're a great community for you to join. So I think they're very much, for me, I'm going to be pushing just the knowledge of the CPAA and what they do to all the members, because I think people need to start thinking about this now, because knowing HMRC, yes, they might say the 2028 is the deadline that they're working towards, but I'm just thinking about the example
of later than that. It's certainly not.
No, but I know full well, having a say, because I run my own practice, there's always that conversation around whether or not to go VAT registered early on versus going ahead and waiting until you've hit that threshold, that turnover, or setting up as a sole trader versus a limited company, getting established, and then having that almost headache of having to transfer everything into the limited company's name, changing all the contracts, changing all the proposals, changing your tax agent, all of that goes with it is a pain, and it's a royal pain, to the point that I thought, even though from day dot, when I didn't have any clients, no turnover or anything, I said, we're getting VAT registered, we're going to be a limited company, and we're going to set it up this way from the start, because I don't want in 12 months, 24 months, whatever, to have to go through that pain and process and pricing and everything that goes with it. So I would be seriously considering, if I didn't have a practice right now and I was studying, or I'm looking to get into the industry, looking at the different professional bodies and saying, who do I want to go? What can they support me with? What can this professional body offer me to help, etc.? And Lee, why don't you talk about what the CPAA does and how you do support your members?
I mean, you talk about support, and support's a big part of it because it's about raising standards. That's the main reason you should want to be a member of a professional body, so that you as a professional are maintaining high standards, and that there is somebody outside of your practice, outside of you, that doesn't know you, that's checking and can certify that you are maintaining those high standards. That's the value from professional body membership. So like with CPAA, our focus is on sole practitioners, small accountancy practitioners. So if you, for example, you've got a money laundering query or an ethical query or a general compliance query, and you as an individual might not know where to get the right information on what you should do, you might need a bit of direction, a bit of support, or just to chat something through. You might have like a suspicious client come through the door. If you're not a member of CPAA or a professional body, where do you turn to for that kind of support, that kind of independent advice? CPAA, you drop our compliance email, a quick email, somebody will give you a ring, they'll talk through a problem with you. You'll get that kind of independent support, that professional advice from a seasoned compliance professional. It's about the CPD. Are you keeping on top of your technical knowledge? And CPAA provides over 20 hours of webinar content a year. We've got all the seminars that we run nationally twice a year. But it's it sounds like you're just trailing something off that lots of people offer, but it's about getting that impartial technical advice, making sure that you're aware of tax changes. It's things like the holiday let recently. That's all changed. If you're kind of sat there in your own little bubble and you're not keeping on top, where you're getting that information from, there's so much that the insurance, which again CPA can assist you with and provide you with insurance, your professional indemnity insurance, so that if something does go wrong, and unfortunately sometimes it does, sometimes you make a mistake, a client takes you to court because the client suffered a loss, that are you going to be able to pay that court bill? Well, if you've got PI, the insurance policy is there to make sure that client's covered and that you're covered, so you're not kind of going out of pocket with that. I'm rambling now, but there's lots that CPA does, and it's all about trying to improve standards and making sure that you as a professional are at the top of your game, and that we're looking at you, making sure that you are, and telling the world that you are.
But I was going to say, I think you're undervaluing, or not undervaluing, but underselling CPAA, because I think, yes, you say that the professional bodies are all providing that. Well, professional bodies do things in different ways, and some of them are a lot, in my opinion, are a lot better at supporting individuals who set up in practice, who've got lots of questions and need the hand holding. Similar to, there's certain accounting firms who specialize in sole traders who are just starting out and they've got lots of questions, or small limited companies who've got lots of questions, versus those that want to focus on larger practices who already know certain things, but they need the hand holding through different things. I think it's like that. So you've got to find the right professional body for you that you want to work with. And also, again, when I say what they can offer, the webinars, the CPD, the seminars, having somebody there to talk to if you need to, or ring up, or that they're going to be available and they're going to pick up the phone. That's another thing that might not always be available to some degree, or you just got to consider these things, I think. So yeah, I can't recommend the CPD enough. The CPAA even, not CPD.
CPD.
The CPD, the CPAA does enough. And obviously Lee's in the group for any questions around the CPAA at any point. That's why we have them in the group, so anybody can ask. How many units, please? Steph, do you mean CPD units? Because that's 20 hours is 20 units, isn't it?
Yeah, so CPA counts them as hours, so just 20 hours of structured CPD, 20 hours of non-structured CPD. So like I said, what we provide is over 20 hours of technical CPD webinar content. So it's all tax, financial reporting, and compliance issues for accountancy practitioners. one thing I would highlight is that CPAA always kind of pays subject matter experts to deliver the webinars. So all of our webinar content is not got like a hidden sales pitch. You sometimes find that if somebody chucks a free webinar up, it's got a bit of an ulterior motive sometimes. Yep. But all of ours are just pure technical.
And how, Steph's just said, how do I take exams?
So at the moment, Steph, you might not need to take any exams to join CPAA. We do offer qualifications. Our qualification program is currently being kind of redeveloped a bit. So you can still sign up. The 2 qualifications we offer will still remain active. They'll form stage 1 and stage 2, but we're developing a stage 3 to our professional qualification. So at the moment, you can take 6 exams with us to complete those 2 first and second stages. They're all computer-based exams. They're remotely invigilated, so you can take them from home. You get connected to somebody sat at the other side of the world who watches you take the exam and make sure that you're not cheating. They're all objective tests, so it's like multiple choice and things there. The 3 broad subject areas are kind of like bookkeeping that falls onto them, financial reporting, tax, which falls onto a bit more advanced tax, and ethics and compliance. You can find out plenty of information on the website, or if you're curious, if you drop me a question on the group or on Facebook.
And what's the website?
It's cpaa.co.uk, and then from there, if you go to,
I'm just typing it into the chat there.
Yeah, and then if you just go at the top, and then you'll see the qualifications. Like I said, it will be changing a bit. What is level 3 will become stage 1. What is level 4 will become stage 2. But if you're curious whether you qualify already for direct membership, become a member. We'll have some information in there as well.
Yeah, and Steph, if you're in the Facebook group, which is the study support for the CPAA, AAT and ICB students, you can contact Lee there, or on LinkedIn too, so you'll find him. And if you can't find Lee, I always say this, but just go to my contacts on LinkedIn. You'll see him there somewhere.
But I would say that if you are thinking about joining us through a qualified by experience route as well, now's the time to really start considering that, because we are talking internally about removing that qualified by experience route to membership, and then just having the professional qualification as the main route. So it is a good time to kind of get in now if you want to go through that qualified by experience route.
And I feel like with this change, I think it's key, I say, to start planning earlier rather than later, making sure you've got all these things set up, because it's like anything. You leave self-assessments to January, HMRC websites go down, all sorts happens. So you don't want to leave things to last minute. Get things sorted out now. Ask the questions and give yourself time to make a decision. Whichever way. But we will end it there, because as always, we always go over time, but I just love talking to Lee, so we can't help ourselves. So, right, I will catch you all in the group then, and Lee, we'll see you again same time next week, or earlier in the week. Yeah,
we'll sort it out, because I'm away on Monday. So yeah, it's the parks.
We'll sort it out. You'll see us at some point. Okay, right. Well, we'll see you all soon, and I'll end that there.